I, 32, F, walked into my husband Mark's office to surprise him with lunch. That was my first mistake. The door was slightly ajar, and I heard a soft giggle that sounded so much like my sister. I pushed the door open without knocking. That was my second mistake. My husband, Mark, 35, a man running for city council on a platform of family values, was sitting in his large leather chair. My younger sister, Amelia, was sitting on his lap. Her arms were draped around his neck, and her head was resting on his shoulder. They were not kissing. They were not doing anything explicitly wrong. But the intimacy of the moment was a physical blow. It knocked the air from my lungs and the warmth from my body. They both looked up, their faces a perfect picture of shock. Mark's smile, the one he used for campaign posters, faltered and fell. Amelia's eyes widened, and she scrambled off his lap, so quickly she almost tripped over the expensive rug. The silence in the room was heavy and suffocating. It was filled with all the things they were not saying, and all the things I suddenly understood. This was not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. This was their routine. "Clara," Mark said, his voice a little too loud, a little too forced. "What are you doing here? I thought you had a meeting this afternoon." I held up the paper bag in my hand. It was from his favorite sandwich shop. "I wanted to surprise you," I said. My voice was flat. I could not find any other tone to use. Amelia smoothed down her skirt, a nervous habit she had since childhood. "Mark was just giving me some advice," she said, her voice high and thin. "About my career. You know how he is. Always willing to help family." I looked at Mark. He stood up, adjusting his tie. He was trying to regain control of the situation, to project the calm authority that made voters trust him. "That's right," he said, nodding. "Amelia is thinking about a career change, and I was just offering my perspective. We were just talking." I looked from his face to my sister's. They both had the same look of strained innocence. It was a look I had seen before, many times, whenever I questioned something that felt wrong. The time I found a receipt for a hotel room I had never been to. The time he missed our anniversary dinner because of a last-minute meeting that Amelia also happened to be at. All the little pieces clicked into place, forming a picture I had refused to see. They thought I was a fool. Maybe I had been. "On his lap?" I asked. The question hung in the air between us. Amelia blushed a deep, ugly red. I was upset. He was comforting me. "You're making this into something it's not, Clara. You always do this." I felt a cold anger begin to build inside me. It started in my stomach and spread through my veins, chasing away the shock. I had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. The one who believed their lies because it was easier than facing the truth. Not anymore. This was the moment everything changed. I placed the lunch bag on the edge of his desk. I did not throw it. I did not yell. I just placed it there, very gently. "I see," I said. My voice was still quiet, but it had a new edge to it. "Career advice. That's what you call it." Mark took a step toward me. "Clara, let's not do this here," he said, his voice low. Amelia was just about to leave. I looked at my sister. She would not meet my eyes. She was grabbing her purse, her hands fumbling with the clasp. She was desperate to escape. "Yes," she mumbled. "I have to go. I have an appointment." She scurried toward the door, not looking at me. As she passed, I said her name. "Amelia." She froze, her hand on the doorknob. She still would not look at me. "I hope the advice was helpful," I said. She did not answer. She just pulled the door open and fled. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence returned, even heavier than before. It was just me and my husband, the man I had loved, the man who was a stranger to me now. "Now listen," he started, taking another step closer. "I know how that looked, but you have to believe me. It was completely innocent." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the lie in his eyes. I saw the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. He was not worried about me. He was worried about his campaign. He was worried about the perfect image he had so carefully crafted. "I believe that you believe it was innocent," I said slowly. Or at least, that you believe I'm stupid enough to buy that story. His face hardened. The charming politician disappeared, and the man I saw in his place was cold and calculating. There is no need to be dramatic, Clara. You're overreacting. Your sister needed my help. I helped her. That's all. I shook my head. No, I said. That's not all. This is not the first time. It's just the first time I've seen it with my own eyes. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was being overshadowed by a new feeling. Resolve. I was not going to cry. I was not going to scream. I was going to find out the truth. The whole truth. I'm going home, I said. We can talk about this later. When you decide to stop lying to me. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving the sandwich bag on his desk. I did not look back. I walked through the bustling campaign headquarters, smiling politely at the young volunteers who greeted me. They all saw me as the perfect political wife. Supportive, smiling, and completely oblivious. They had no idea that the foundation of that perfect image had just crumbled to dust. As I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not be a victim in this story. They had made a very big mistake. They had underestimated me, and they were going to regret it. When I got home, the house felt empty and cold. Every picture of us on the walls seemed to mock me. Our wedding photo, where he was looking at me with what I thought was love. A picture from our last vacation, where we were both smiling for the camera, a perfect couple. I walked from room to room, touching the furniture, the books, the objects that made up our life together. It all felt like a lie. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we shared, and I finally let the tears come. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. How long had this been going on? Months? Years? Was our whole marriage a sham? I thought about Amelia, my little sister, who I had protected and supported her whole life. She had always been a little lost, a little reckless. I had always been the responsible one. I had helped her get jobs, paid her rent when she was short, listened to her endless dramas. And this was how she repaid me. By sneaking around with my husband. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. We need to talk. I'm on my way home. Please don't do anything rash. Anything rash. He was worried I would call my mother or his parents. He was worried I would cause a scene. He was not worried about my heart, which felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. I took a deep breath. I would not be rash. I would be careful. I would be methodical. I wiped my tears and stood up. I went to his home office, the one place in the house that was his domain. He kept his personal laptop here. He thought it was password protected, but I knew the password. It was the name of his first dog, a detail he had shared with me on one of our first dates. A detail he had probably long forgotten. I sat down at his desk and opened the laptop. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I was looking for something, anything, that would tell me the truth. I started with his emails. There were hundreds of them, mostly related to the campaign. But then I saw a folder labeled Personal. My heart started to beat faster. I clicked on it. It was filled with emails between him and Amelia. I started reading, and with every word, the betrayal cut deeper. They were not just having an affair. It was much worse than that. They talked about me. They mocked me. He called me his dutiful, boring wife. She called me Saint Clara, who thinks she's better than everyone. They made jokes about how easy it was to lie to me. They talked about their future together, a future that did not include me. A future where he would win the election, and then, after a suitable amount of time, he would leave me for her. He would paint me as unstable, as jealous, as the reason for the marriage failing. He would protect his image, and she would get everything she had always wanted. His money, his status, his life. My life. But there was more. Tucked away in the emails were attachments. Bank statements. Documents related to a company I had never heard of. Riverwood Development. I opened one of the statements. There were large payments, tens of thousands of dollars, going from Riverwood Development to a holding company. And from that holding company, there were smaller but still significant payments being made to Amelia. It was not just an affair. It was a business arrangement. I did not understand what it all meant, not yet. But I knew it was bad. This was the real secret they were keeping. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. I heard his car pull into the driveway. I quickly closed the laptop and put it back exactly where I found it. I went downstairs to face him, my mind racing. I had to pretend that all I knew about was the affair. I could not let him know I had seen the emails. I could not let him know I was starting to uncover his other, bigger secrets. He walked in the door, his face a mask of concern. He was holding a bouquet of flowers. My favorite kind. Lilies. The hypocrisy of it made me want to scream. Clara, he said softly, holding them out to me.
I am so sorry.
I know what you saw was unacceptable, but I promise you it meant nothing. I looked at the flowers, then at his face. Save it, Mark, I said, my voice cold. I don't want her flowers. I want the truth. He sighed, putting the flowers down on the table. I am telling you the truth. Amelia was having a hard time. She came to me for support. I was just being a friend, a brother-in-law. I crossed a line by letting her sit on my lap. It was a moment of weakness. It will never happen again. A moment of weakness? I repeated. That's your excuse? Yes, he said, his voice earnest. That's exactly what it was. I love you, Clara. You are my wife. I would never do anything to jeopardize that. I had a fight to keep my face neutral. Every word out of his mouth was a lie. He had just spent months, maybe years, planning to leave me. He had called me boring. He had plotted with my sister to ruin my life. And now he was standing here, telling me he loved me. The audacity of it was breathtaking. So, you're saying nothing has been going on between you and Amelia? I asked, pushing him. I needed to see how far he would go with his lies. Absolutely nothing, he said, looking me straight in the eye. I swear on my life. I almost laughed. His life was worth nothing. His promises were worthless. I knew in that moment that I could not trust a single thing he said. I had to find the truth on my own. And when I found it, I was not just going to leave him. I was going to make sure that everyone knew exactly who Mark Turner really was. The charming family man was a fraud, and I was going to be the one to expose him. The next few days were a strange kind of torture. I lived in the same house with Mark, pretending that I was considering forgiving him. I let him believe his lies were working. I played the part of the wounded wife, hurt but willing to try to work things out. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. Every time he touched me, my skin crawled. Every time he told me he loved me, I had to bite my tongue to keep from calling him a liar. He was overly attentive, buying me gifts, suggesting we go on a trip after the election. He was trying to buy my silence, to manage the situation. He and Amelia were being careful now. There were no more late-night phone calls, no more secret meetings that I could see. They thought they had weathered the storm. They thought I was calming down, that I would eventually go back to being the dutiful, oblivious wife. They were wrong. During the day, while Mark was at his campaign office, I started my real work. I began to dig into Riverwood development. It did not take long to find out that they were a major real estate developer in the city. And they were the ones behind the controversial waterfront project that Mark had been championing on the city council. The project was supposed to bring jobs and money to the city, but it was also deeply unpopular with local residents who were worried about the environmental impact and the displacement of small businesses. Mark had been the project's most vocal supporter. He had pushed it through committee meetings, assuring everyone that it was a good deal for the city. Now I was starting to see why. He was not just supporting the project. He was profiting from it. The payments to the holding company and then to Amelia were clearly bribes. Kickbacks for his political support. My sister was not just his mistress. She was his money launderer. The knowledge was a heavy weight in my gut. This was no longer just about a broken heart. This was about crime. This was about a man who was willing to sell out his city for personal gain, and a sister who was helping him do it. I felt sick. But I also felt a surge of adrenaline. This was bigger than I ever imagined. The stakes were higher now. I needed help. I could not do this alone. I thought about going to the police, but I had no concrete proof yet. Just emails and bank statements from his personal computer. They could be explained away, dismissed as forgeries. I needed something more. Something undeniable. I called my best friend, Sarah. She was a journalist, a tough, no-nonsense investigative reporter for the local paper. If anyone could help me figure out what to do next, it was her. We met at a small coffee shop on the other side of town, far from our usual spots. I told her everything. I started with finding Amelia on Mark's lap, and I ended with the bank statements for Riverwood Development. I watched her face as I spoke. Her expression went from sympathy to shock to a hard, focused intensity that I knew well. It was the look she got when she was onto a big story. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. She just stared into her coffee cup. Then she looked up at me. "Clara," she said, her voice serious. "This is huge. If what you're saying is true, this is not just a divorce. This is a major political scandal. It could destroy him." "I know," I said. "That's the point." She raised an eyebrow. "So, this is about revenge." At first, it was, I admitted. When I thought it was just the affair, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to hurt both of them. But now it's about more than that. He's a criminal, Sarah. He's lying to everyone. He's using his power to enrich himself. He can't be allowed to win this election. He can't be allowed to get away with this. Sarah nodded slowly. "You're right. But we have to be smart about this. They will come after you. They will try to discredit you. Mark's campaign will paint you as a bitter, vengeful wife. They'll say you're making it all up because you're jealous of your sister." "I know," I said. "That's why I need your help. I need to find proof that no one can deny. I need to know how to use it." She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we're going to do. First, you need to keep pretending. Let him think you're still on the fence about your marriage. Don't let him suspect you know anything about Riverwood. We need the element of surprise on our side." I nodded. "I can do that." "Good," she said. "Second, I'm going to start digging into Riverwood Development from my end. I'll be careful. I'll use my sources, check public records, follow the money trail. I'll see what I can find out about their connection to your husband. But you need to keep looking on your end. You have access he doesn't know you have. His laptop, his files. Be careful. Cover your tracks. Copy everything you find onto a secure drive." "Okay," I said, feeling a sense of purpose for the first time in days. I was not just a victim anymore. I was an investigator. "And third," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "we need to find the smoking gun. The one piece of evidence that will tie it all together. A recorded conversation. A signed document. A witness who is willing to talk. Something that will make it impossible for him to deny." We sat in the coffee shop for another hour, making a plan. Sarah gave me a special software to install on his laptop that would copy his files without him knowing. She told me what kind of information to look for. She warned me to be careful, to watch my back. When I left, I felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. I was walking into a war, and I was determined to win. That night, I went home and played my part. I let Mark cook me dinner. I listened to him talk about his day on the campaign trail. I even let him hold my hand. It took every ounce of my self-control not to pull away. While he was in the shower, I went to his office. I installed the software Sarah had given me. It worked perfectly, running silently in the background, copying everything. Over the next week, I became a spy in my own home. I listened to his phone calls. I read his text messages. I went through the files on his laptop every night after he fell asleep. And the picture became clearer and uglier. Mark was not just taking bribes. He was deeply entangled with the CEO of Riverwood Development, a man named Arthur Vance. They had a system. Vance would inflate the costs of the waterfront project, and Mark would approve the inflated budgets at the city council meetings. The extra money would then be funneled through the holding company and into Amelia's account. She was not just a passive participant. She was actively involved. I found emails where she was discussing the details of the transfers, asking for her cut. She was getting a percentage of every corrupt deal. My own sister was a criminal. The realization hit me harder than the affair. The affair was a betrayal of love. This was a betrayal of blood. She had chosen money and a man who did not love her over her own family. I also discovered their plan for me. Just as Mark had written in his emails, their long-term goal was to get him elected and then for him to divorce me. But it was worse than I thought. They had a file on me, a collection of every mistake I had ever made, every argument we had ever had, twisted and exaggerated to make me look unstable. They were planning to use it to fight me in the divorce, to make sure I got nothing. They were even planning to use it to try to get me committed, to paint me as mentally unwell, so no one would believe me if I ever tried to expose them. Reading that file was the moment my last bit of hesitation vanished. Any lingering feelings of love or loyalty I had for Mark or Amelia died. They were not just betraying me. They were trying to destroy me. They saw me as an obstacle to be removed. Well, this obstacle was about to fight back. I copied everything onto a secure hard drive, which I gave to Sarah for safekeeping. We now had a mountain of evidence. Emails, bank statements, text messages, even the disgusting file they had been building on me. But Sarah was right. We still needed the smoking gun. We needed something that was not just digital. Something they could not claim was faked or hacked. The opportunity came in a way I never expected. Mark was hosting a big fundraising gala for his campaign. It was the most important event of the election cycle. The mayor would be there, along with all the most powerful people in the city. And, of course, Arthur Vance, the CEO of Riverwood Development, was the guest of honor. Mark was stressed about the gala. He wanted everything to be perfect. He asked me to help with the planning, to be the perfect hostess. I agreed immediately. It was the perfect opportunity. I knew Mark and Vance would have to meet at some point during the night to discuss their business. And I was going to make sure I was there to hear it. Sarah helped me get a recording device. It was tiny, disguised as a brooch that I could pin to my dress. It was state-of-the-art, with a powerful microphone. The plan was simple. I would stick close to Mark all night. When he went to meet with Vance, I would find a way to be nearby. I would record their conversation. It was risky. If I got caught, it would all be over. But it was a risk I was willing to take. The night of the gala arrived. I wore a red dress, a color Mark had always said he loved on me. I wanted to look beautiful. I wanted to look like the strong, confident wife of a future city councilman. I did not want to look like a woman whose world was falling apart. I wanted them to see me and to see what they were about to lose. The ballroom was glittering. People were laughing, drinking champagne, talking about the election. Mark was in his element, shaking hands, smiling, charming everyone he met. I stood by his side, playing my part. I smiled until my face ached. I made small talk with people I could not stand. I watched Amelia, who was there as a campaign volunteer. She was flirting with a wealthy donor, her eyes shining with greed. She avoided me all night. Late in the evening, I saw Mark give a subtle nod to Arthur Vance. Vance nodded back. Then Mark turned to me. "Darling," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I need to have a quick word with Mr. Vance in private. Could you make sure our guests are being taken care of?" "Of course, dear," I said, giving him a perfect, loving smile. This was it. He and Vance walked away, heading toward a small, private study off the main ballroom. I gave them a minute to get inside. Then I excused myself from the group I was talking to. I walked calmly toward the study. The door was thick and heavy.
I could not just stand outside it.
Someone would see me. I noticed a small service corridor next to the study. It was used by the catering staff. I slipped inside. It was dark and narrow. I could hear the clatter of dishes from the kitchen at the far end. But one wall of the corridor was shared with the study. I pressed my ear against the wall. I could hear their voices, muffled but audible. I reached up and touched the brooch on my dress, activating the recorder. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Please let this work," I prayed. "Is everything in place for the final transfer?" It was Mark's voice. "Of course," Vance replied. His voice was gravelly, like a lifelong smoker. "The final payment will be made to the holding company the day after the election." Once you're in office, we can push through the final zoning changes without any more interruptions. Good, Mark said. And what about the councilwoman who keeps asking questions? The one who is worried about the environmental report. Vance laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Don't worry about her. We have some information that will persuade her to be a team player. Everyone has a price, Mark. You should know that by now. I do, Mark said. Just make sure it's handled quietly. I can't afford any more complications. My wife is already being difficult. The sister told me she saw you, Vance said. Is that going to be a problem? No, Mark said confidently. I've handled it. Clara is emotional, but she's not stupid. She knows which side her bread is buttered on. She'll fall in line. And if she doesn't, well, we have a plan for that, don't we? I felt a chill run down my spine.
They were talking about me.
About the file they had created to destroy me. Just make sure you keep your end of the bargain, Vance, Mark said, his voice hard. I'm taking all the risks here. And you're getting all the rewards, Vance countered. 50% of the profits from the inflated material costs. That's a very generous reward, I'd say. More than enough to set you and your little girlfriend up for life once you get rid of the wife. I had it. I had everything. Their whole criminal conspiracy, laid out in their own words. The bribes, the blackmail, the plan to get rid of me. It was all on the recording. I backed away from the wall, my hand shaking as I touched the brooch to turn off the device. I had my smoking gun. I slipped out of the corridor and back into the glittering ballroom. No one had noticed I was gone. I saw Mark and Vance emerge from the study, both of them smiling, looking pleased with themselves. Mark came over to me and put his arm around my waist. Everything okay, darling? He asked. I looked up at him and gave him my brightest smile yet. Everything is perfect, I said. The next morning I met Sarah. I played her the recording. She listened, her eyes wide. When it was finished, she just shook her head in disbelief. This is it, Clara, she said. This is the whole story. We have him. We have all of them. So what now? I asked. Now we decide how to use it, she said. We could take it to the police. They would open an investigation. It would be quiet and it would take months. Or we could take it public. What do you mean? I mean I write the story, she said, her voice filled with excitement. I publish everything. The emails, the bank statements, the recording. We release it all at once. It will be an explosion. It will be the biggest political story this city has ever seen. It will be front-page news. It will make headlines across the state. Headlines across the state. The phrase echoed in my mind. That was what I wanted. I did not want a quiet investigation. I wanted a public reckoning. I wanted everyone to know who Mark Turner really was. I wanted him to be humiliated, disgraced, and destroyed in the same public arena he loved so much. And I wanted Amelia to be right there beside him. Let's do it, I said. Let's make some headlines. Sarah and I worked for the next 2 days, preparing everything. She wrote the article, a masterpiece of investigative journalism. It laid out the whole story, from the affair to the corruption, in meticulous detail. We compiled all the evidence, the emails, the financial records, and the transcript of the recording from the gala. We were building a bomb, and we were about to detonate it. The plan was to publish the story online on the morning of the election. It would be too late for Mark to do any damage control. The news would spread like wildfire. Voters would be reading it on their phones as they went to the polls. It would be a complete and utter political assassination. The night before the election, Mark was in high spirits. The final polls showed him with a comfortable lead. He was confident he was going to win. He came home with a bottle of expensive champagne. To us, he said, pouring 2 glasses. And to our future. I know things have been difficult lately, Clara. But I promise you, after tomorrow, everything is going to be different. I'm going to make it up to you. I took the glass from him, my hand steady. To our future, I repeated, looking him in the eye. Whatever it may hold. We drank the champagne. He had no idea it was the last time we would ever share a drink as husband and wife. He had no idea that in less than 12 hours, his entire world was going to come crashing down around him. I felt a strange sense of pity for him, for a fleeting moment. He was so arrogant, so sure of himself. He had no idea what was coming. But the feeling passed quickly, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. He deserved this. They both did. I went to bed early, claiming I had a headache. I lay in the dark, listening to the sound of his breathing beside me. I did not sleep. I just waited for the dawn. The next morning, I woke up before he did. I slipped out of bed and went to my computer. Sarah's article was scheduled to go live at 6 a.m., just as the polls were opening. I sat and watched the clock. At exactly 6 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "It's live." I clicked the link she sent me, and there it was. The headline was stark and brutal. Councilman Mark Turner implicated in bribery and corruption scandal on eve of election. Underneath it was a picture of Mark, smiling his charming campaign smile. And next to it was a picture of Amelia. The article was devastating. Sarah had left no stone unturned. She had included excerpts from the emails, copies of the bank statements, and the full transcript of the conversation between Mark and Vance. She had even uploaded the audio file of the recording so people could hear it for themselves. My phone started ringing. It was my mother. I ignored it. Then it started buzzing with notifications from social media. The story was already spreading. #Turner Scandal was trending. I heard Mark stirring in the bedroom. A few moments later, he walked into the living room, yawning. He was still in his pajamas. "Morning," he said, stretching. "Big day today." "Yes, it is," I said, not looking up from my phone. His own phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter. He walked over to it. I watched him as he picked it up. I watched his face as he read the headline. The color drained from his cheeks. His confident smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. He stared at the screen, his mouth hanging open. He scrolled through the article, his hand shaking. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning fury. "You," he whispered. "You did this." I finally looked up from my phone and met his gaze. I did not say a word. I just gave him a small, cold smile. And in that moment he knew that I knew everything. He knew that he had lost. "How could you?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "Clara, how could you do this to me? To us. To us?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "There is no us, Mark. There hasn't been for a very long time.
You destroyed that.
You and my sister." His face contorted with rage. "You have ruined me," he shouted. "My career, my life, everything. For what? Because of a stupid, meaningless fling." "A meaningless fling?" I said, standing up. I was done being quiet. "You call this meaningless? You were stealing from this city. You were planning to destroy me, to have me committed. You and Amelia were laughing at me behind my back while you plotted to take everything I had. You think that's meaningless?" He was speechless. He just stared at me, his chest heaving. His phone was ringing incessantly now. His campaign manager, his donors, the press. The whole world was calling to ask him if the story was true. "This isn't just about the affair, Mark," I continued, my voice rising with every word. "This is about who you are. You are a liar. You are a thief. You are a corrupt, pathetic man who preys on the trust of others. And everyone is about to see it." Just then, there was a frantic banging on the front door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. It was Amelia. She burst in, her face pale and tear-stained. She was holding her phone in her hand. "Mark," she cried, ignoring me completely. "Have you seen it? What are we going to do? My picture is everywhere. They're calling me a criminal." She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. "You did this," she hissed. "You snake. I always knew you were jealous of me." I laughed. The sound was harsh and humorless. "Jealous of you, Amelia? Jealous of what? Your greed? Your treachery?" You sold out your own sister for a man who is using you and a pile of dirty money. There is nothing about you to be jealous of. There is only a great, deep well of pity. You will not get away with this, she shrieked, her voice shrill. We will sue you. We will sue the newspaper. We will tell everyone you're a liar. Go ahead, I said calmly. Tell them I faked the emails. Tell them I forged the bank statements. Tell them I hired actors to record that conversation. Let's see who they believe. You or the mountain of evidence against you. The fight seemed to drain out of her. She looked at Mark, her eyes pleading. Mark, do something, she begged. But Mark was not looking at her.
He was looking at me.
The anger was gone, replaced by a look of cold, calculating hatred. It was the scariest look I had ever seen on his face. You will regret this, Clara, he said, his voice low and menacing. I will make you regret this for the rest of your life. Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. This one was louder, more official. I opened it to find 2 police detectives standing on our doorstep. Mark Turner, one of them asked. Mark's face went white as a sheet. We have a warrant for your arrest, the detective said, holding up a piece of paper. And for yours, Miss Amelia Hayes. The rest of the day was a blur. I watched as they put my husband and my sister in handcuffs and led them away. I watched as news vans pulled up outside my house, their cameras pointed at my front door. I watched as the life I had known was dismantled, piece by piece, right in front of my eyes. I did not feel sad. I did not feel triumphant. I just felt empty. The war was over. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. Later that day, Sarah came over. She brought a bottle of wine. We sat in my silent living room, watching the news. Every channel was leading with the story. They were calling it the biggest political scandal in the state's history. Mark's campaign was in ruins. He had officially withdrawn from the race. Arthur Vance had been arrested as well. The whole corrupt enterprise had been brought down. You did it, Clara, Sarah said, raising her glass. You brought down the king. I took a sip of wine. It doesn't feel like I thought it would, I confessed. It never does, she said. But you did the right thing. You protected a lot of people from him. You should be proud of that. I was not sure if I was proud, but I was relieved. I was relieved that the lies were over. I was relieved that I did not have to pretend anymore. I was free. The legal fallout was long and messy. Mark, Amelia, and Arthur Vance were charged with multiple counts of fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. The evidence against them was overwhelming. My recording, along with the digital evidence I had collected, was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Mark tried to fight it. His expensive lawyers tried to argue that I was an unreliable witness, a scorned wife seeking revenge. They tried to paint me as mentally unstable, using the very file he had created to destroy me. But it did not work. The evidence was too strong. The audio recording was undeniable. In the end, they all took plea deals to avoid a lengthy trial. Mark was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Arthur Vance got 10. And Amelia, my sister, was sentenced to 3 years. Her involvement was less direct, but she was still a crucial part of the conspiracy. I had to testify at their sentencing hearings. It was the first time I had seen them since the day of their arrest. Mark refused to look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his face a grim, emotionless mask. But Amelia looked at me. Her eyes were filled with a burning hatred that chilled me to the bone. She did not see a sister she had wronged. She saw an enemy who had defeated her. My family was shattered. My parents were devastated. At first, they had a hard time believing it. They tried to make excuses for Amelia. They said she must have been manipulated by Mark. But as the evidence came out, they could no longer deny the truth. My mother called me, crying. She apologized for not seeing it sooner, for not believing me when I had tried to warn her about Amelia's character in the past. It was a difficult conversation, but it was a necessary one. Our relationship would never be the same, but we were starting to rebuild. I filed for divorce, of course. The process was surprisingly simple. With Mark in prison and all his assets frozen, He had no grounds to fight me. I got the house and a significant portion of our shared assets that were not tied to his criminal activities. I sold the house immediately. I could not stand to live there anymore. It was filled with too many ghosts. I moved to a small apartment in a different part of the city. I started to build a new life for myself, one that was not defined by Mark or his ambitions. I went back to school to finish the degree I had abandoned to support his career. I reconnected with old friends. I started to remember who I was before I became Mrs. Mark Turner. Sarah's career took off. The story won her a prestigious journalism award. She became one of the most respected investigative reporters in the state. We remained close friends. She was one of the few people who understood what I had been through. I did not follow the news about Mark or Amelia in prison. I did not want to know. They were a part of my past, a chapter of my life that I was determined to close. I had done what I had to do. I had exposed the truth. Justice had been served. Now it was time for me to heal. One day, about a year after the sentencing, I received a letter. It was from Amelia. It had been forwarded from my old address. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The letter was not an apology. It was a tirade of hate. She blamed me for everything. For her ruined life, for her prison sentence, for taking Mark away from her. She said she would never forgive me. She said that one day she would get out and she would make me pay. I read the letter, and I did not feel fear. I did not feel anger. I just felt a profound sense of sadness. Sadness for the sister I had lost, the sister who had never really been my sister at all. She had learned nothing. She still did not understand that she had brought this all on herself. I took the letter, and I burned it. I watched the ashes float away in the wind. And as they disappeared, I felt a final sense of release. She had no more power over me. None of them did. The headlines had faded. The scandal was old news. Life in the city had moved on. A new city council had been elected, one that was focused on reform and transparency. The waterfront project had been canceled. The damage Mark had done was slowly being undone. I had found a quiet kind of peace. I was not the same person I was before. I was stronger. I was more cautious. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the most deeply. But I had also learned that I was a survivor. They had tried to break me. They had tried to erase me. But I was still standing. I had walked through the fire of their betrayal and come out the other side, scarred but whole. They had thought I was just a wife, a quiet, supportive, background figure in the great drama of their lives. They had forgotten that I was the one who knew all their secrets. And in the end, that was the one thing they could not control. They had made headlines just as they had always wanted. But it was not the story they had intended to write.
It was my story.
And it was a story of truth, of justice, and of a woman who refused to be silenced. The final, unsettling note was not one of lingering fear, but of a quiet, steely resolve. I had learned to stop giving warnings. I had learned to stop hoping for the best in people who had already shown me their worst. They had finally learned what it felt like to be small, to be powerless, to have their lives picked apart by strangers. And I had learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to take it for yourself. I would never be that naive girl again. And I was okay with that. I was more than okay. I was free. The years that followed were quiet ones. I finished my degree in social work and started a career I loved, working with families in crisis. It was challenging, but it was meaningful. It felt good to be helping people, to be a force for good in the world, a stark contrast to the destructive path Mark and Amelia had chosen. I rarely thought of them. They were like characters in a book I had read a long time ago. Their story was over. Mine was still being written. I dated a little, but I was cautious. I was not looking for another great romance. I was happy with my own company, with my friends, with my work. I had built a life that was my own, on my own terms. I was self-sufficient, and I cherished that independence above all else. One day, I was in a grocery store, picking out vegetables, when I heard a voice I had not heard in years. "Clara?" I turned. It was my mother. We had spoken on the phone, exchanged holiday cards, but we had not seen each other in person since the trial. She looked older, more frail. The scandal had taken its toll on her as well. "Mom," I said, surprised. We stood there for a moment in awkward silence. Then she did something I did not expect. She reached out and hugged me. It was a tight, desperate hug. "I'm so sorry, Clara," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry for everything. For not seeing what Amelia was. For not supporting you more." Tears pricked my eyes. I hugged her back. "It's okay, Mom," I said. "It's in the past." "No, it's not okay," she said, pulling back, wiping her eyes. "I was a terrible mother. I was so focused on Amelia's problems that I ignored my good, steady daughter. I took you for granted, and I let her get away with so much." We talked for a long time, right there in the produce aisle. She told me that Amelia was due to be released from prison in a few months. The thought sent a small jolt through me, but it was not fear. It was more like a distant curiosity. "She's written to me," my mother said, her voice hesitant. "She says she's changed, that she's found religion. She wants to make amends." I just nodded. I did not say what I was thinking, that people like Amelia did not change. They just found new ways to manipulate people. "She wants to see you," my mother added, looking at me hopefully. I shook my head. "No," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I can't. I wish her well. I hope she has a good life. But she is not a part of my life anymore. I have to protect myself, Mom. I have to protect my peace." My mother looked disappointed, but she nodded in understanding.
I get it, she said. Ido.
"I won't push you." We parted on good terms. It felt like a kind of closure, a healing of a wound I had not realized was still so raw.
I was grateful for that.
A few months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer it, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Clara? It's me." The voice was raspy, unfamiliar, but I knew who it was. It was Amelia. I was silent for a long moment. I did not know what to say. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me," she said, her voice rushing out in a torrent. "And I don't blame you. But I had to try. I'm out now. I'm living in a halfway house. I'm going to meetings. I'm trying to get my life together. And I wanted to tell you.
I am sorry.
I am so sorry for what I did to you." Her voice was filled with a sincerity that almost sounded real. The old Clara, the one who always wanted to believe the best in people, might have been moved. But the new Clara was more discerning. "Why are you calling me Amelia?" I asked, my voice even. "I told you."
To apologize, she said.
And to ask for your forgiveness." "I see," I said. "And what would my forgiveness do for you?" She was silent for a moment. It would mean everything," she said. "It's part of my recovery. Making amends. I can't move forward until I know you've forgiven me." There it was.
It was not about me.
It was about her. She did not need my forgiveness for my sake. She needed it for hers. It was another transaction. Another thing she wanted from me. "I cannot give you what you're looking for, Amelia," I said, my voice calm and final. "Forgiveness is not something I can just hand over to make you feel better about yourself. It's something you have to earn. And you have a very long way to go."
"But
"I've changed," she insisted, a note of her old petulance creeping into her voice. "I hope you have," I said, "for your sake. But my life has moved on. I have found peace. And I will not allow you to disrupt it. Do not call me again." I hung up the phone before she could reply. I blocked the number. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of a confrontation I had not expected. But I had handled it. I had held my boundary. I had not let her manipulate me. I was proud of that. As for Mark, I heard he was released from prison a few years later. He moved out of state, disgraced and broke. He never tried to contact me. He had become a ghost, a footnote in my life story. I never did find another great love. But I found something better. I found myself. I found a strength I never knew I had. I learned that I could face the darkest of betrayals and not only survive, but thrive. My story had made headlines, just as the title of a trashy novel might suggest. But the real story was not in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments that followed, in the rebuilding of a life, in the rediscovery of self-worth, in the quiet victory of a woman who took back her own narrative. The final note was this: they thought their power was in their secrets and their public image. But my power was in the truth. And the truth, once it is set free, is a force that cannot be contained. They built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and I was the gust of wind that blew it all down. And I would do it again.